Welcome to the RMAG Denver Building Stones virtual field trip with our hosts David Schoderbek and Rob Diedrich. And Rob's going to kick it off. So welcome.
Great, thanks. Great, thank you very much, Debbie. Well, on behalf of the RMAG's On the Rocks Field Trip Committee, David Schoderbek and I would like to officially kick off the 2021 field season with a virtual tour of some of Denver's historic stone buildings and the quarries where the building blocks originated. Now, we often think of Colorado as a state that is rich in mining history, but it also is a state that is rich in quarry history, with Colorado building stones used in construction and sites in Colorado, throughout the United States, and also throughout the world. So here is the Colorado Geological Survey time chart, and this shows the rocks that we'll be talking about during today's tour. So I'll be talking about the sedimentary and metasedimentary rocks from the Paleozoic era, including the Lyons Sandstone and the Yule marble. Dave is going to be talking about the hard rocks. He'll talk about some of the tuffs that are tertiary in age, as well as some of the granites that are quarried and used in buildings throughout the state here in the Proterozoic. And here you can see we have a collage of some of the photographs of some of these building stones. So here's an index map of more or less central Colorado. And of course, all of the buildings that we'll be talking about today are from Denver. And then the red dots on this map show the quarry locations. So there are many here along the Front Range, reaching from Lyons down to Colorado Springs. And then a lot of the hard rocks are up in the mountains. You know, the Badger Creek Tuff, Pikes Peak Granite, the Brain Granite up here by Rocky Mountain National Park. But we'll begin the discussion today, the tour today actually, with the Yule Marble Quarry, which is located about 60 miles south of the town of Glenwood Springs. So here's a Google Earth image of this area. The blue dot represents the Yule Marble Quarry location, and it is situated here among the Elk Mountains, just outside of the town of Marble, Colorado. Now, the Yule is Colorado's most famous quarried rock. In fact, in 2004, the state legislature voted it to have the State Rock of Colorado, and this was due to a recommendation from a Girl Scout troop in Lakewood, Colorado. Here's another Google Earth image of the quarry itself, and this white stripe is the marble. You can see the quarry roads, and if you look closely, you can see some large tunnels that go into the mountain where the quarry operations exist. So this deposit was discovered in 1873, and it is pure calcite, very attractive building stone. It is largely quarried underground, and the quarry is at an elevation of 9,300 feet, which is challenging for operations. The quarry has undergone many boom and bust cycles, but it is still active today. It is operated by a company called Colorado Stone Quarries, and that organization is a subsidiary of a larger Italian parent corporation. Now, the parent rock for the Yule marble is actually the Mississippian Leadville limestone, and it was transformed to marble by contact metamorphism. Now, this metamorphism is a function of the intrusion of this granitic Treasure Mountain dome, which occurred in the Eocene-Oligocene period about 30 million years ago. And this is a schematic cross-section from the Marble Historical Society collection. And it shows a little bit about the geology of the area. Essentially, the dome uplift tilted the Paleozoic rock layers away from the intrusion, resulting in the metamorphism of this Paleozoic section, and then the dipping of these rocks at angles of about 35 to 50 degrees. So the Yule is this white unit. It's about 150 to 200 feet thick at the quarry location. little bit about the Yule marble quarry history. So operations began in 1886 with multiple pit-type quarries. And there was indeed a transportation challenge of getting this rock out of the mountains due to the high altitude and snow and winter conditions. But the first major contract for the Yule was in 1895 with the construction of the Colorado State Capitol. 140,000 square feet of marble was used in the construction of this building. In 1905, the Colorado Yule Marble Company became the first operator to begin quarry operations inside the mountain. A railroad spur was built to the town of Marble in 1906, and that really effectively improved the ability to get this marble out to the market. Now through those early years, there were numerous operators, many boom and bust cycles, all the way to 1941, when the quarry was closed down at the beginning of World War II due to lack of demand. And the quarry was dormant for nearly 50 years, and then it reopened in September 1990, and it's been operating ever since. So the next few slides I have here are historic pictures from the early 1900s, late 1800s, and they are provided courtesy of Colorado Stone Quarries. So here's a picture of the outside of the quarry operation and a large 50-ton electric hoist that was used. Here you can see it transferring one of the large blocks away from the quarry wall. Now the way the rocks were brought down the mountain was on a windy road that ascended 1,300 feet from the town of Marble up to the quarry site. And here you can see the use of a steam tractor hauling rocks on wagons. Today, trucks are used to go up and down this road and bring the rocks away from the quarry. Here is a picture of the finishing mill in the town of Marble at the early 1900s. So here the marble was shaped and transformed into finished objects for buildings. And this was a huge operation. The building itself was 1,400 feet long from its longest point to the other end. And it contained 108,000 square feet of workspace for the workers. At this time, this was the largest operation of this kind in the world. Here's a picture showing how the rock was cut back then. So essentially, holes were drilled or channeled into the sides of the blocks where they wanted the cuts to occur. And then the miners would come in with large levers, iron levers, and they would use those to pry the blocks away from the quarry face. So you can see this was a labor-intensive operation, very arduous. It took a lot of manpower to cut the rock back in the olden days. But today, most of the rock is cut with these diamond-studded rock saws. This particular saw is about 8 feet long. You can see the teeth on it. Each of these teeth is studded with industrial-grade diamonds. So essentially, they pick out a location and they use that saw to cut the blocks. They also use another type of saw called a diamond-studded wire saw, which is used often to cut the back of the blocks. But here you can see a cut in the outside of the quarry. You can see the saw marks from the diamond-studded saw. And then you can see the wonderful veining in this quarry and in the marble itself. This is what makes this marble so attractive for building stone and for things like kitchen counter. Here's a picture from the inside of the quarry. You can see here that the large size of the blocks. Here's a worker for scale, but this block is easily 10 feet long and probably 7 or 8 feet high. And the unique thing about working inside the Yule quarry is that there are shafts of light that come in through the doors and through the various openings. And if you go online, you can see some kind of wonderful artsy photographs of sunbeams coming into quarry operations within the Yule. And here you can see there's a large bulldozer for scale. A few other facts about the quarry operation. So it's a year-round operation, which is quite challenging because that road heading up to the quarry has 14 avalanche chutes that need to be maintained. And this is a high-quality marble. In fact, it is estimated that 60 to 80% of the rock in the quarry is recoverable. Now, this is compared to other marble quarries around the world, on the East Coast, in Europe, where 20 to 25% of the marble is typically the most that they can retrieve from these operations. 90% of the marble here is shipped to Italy. And in fact, Italy is the epicenter of all things to do with marble. Many of the workers, many of the management team that operate the Yule quarry are from Italy. A lot of the equipment that is used in quarry operations here is actually manufactured in Italy. And this goes all the way back to the days of Michelangelo and the quarry operations in the Carrara marble. There's a lot of rock here left to quarry. 1.5 million cubic feet is estimated, and that's easily a century's worth of work. But here again, you can see some large, beautiful blocks of the Yule, probably 20 feet high here, that have been cut and are ready for processing. So now we're going to go to Denver, and there are many buildings in Denver that use the Yule marble. But probably one of the best ones to look at is the old U.S. Post Office, which is located on the corner of 18th Street and Stout, really close to the downtown post office. Now, this building was constructed, and I can't see the slide, there we go, was constructed from 1913 to 1916, and it was built during peak production from the Yule quarry. It is a neoclassical revival architectural design characterized by these massive ionic columns that you can see here. Now, this building was renovated from 1992 to 1994 and was converted to the Byron White Courthouse at a cost of about $27 million. Now, this renovation coincided with a reopening of the Yule quarry in 1990, so a lot of the new stone was used in this renovation project. So here are some zoom-in pictures on some of the carvings on the outside of the building. Here you can see some beautifully delicate eagle motifs on the corners of the buildings. The upper reaches of the buildings have the names of the U.S. Attorney Generals carved into them, and you can see them as you walk around the building itself. But probably the most characteristic aspect of this building are these 16 massive ionic columns here on the Stout Street side. And you can see these are huge. They reach several stories in height. If we take a zoom in look at these columns, you can see the beautiful fluting on the sides. And then you can also see that it consists of discs or drums that have been milled and manufactured and stacked to build these columns. And here's a historic photograph of one of these drums from the marble mill. And essentially, these are cut and shaped in the mill and then loaded on train cars and then shipped to the location where these buildings are being constructed. The Cheeseman Memorial is another famous and really probably one of my favorite structures in the city that's made of the Yule marble. It's located on the east side of Cheeseman Park, constructed in 1908, and it is said that 38 freight cars of marble were shipped here to make this structure. Perhaps the most famous building anywhere constructed of the Yule marble is the Lincoln Memorial. This was constructed from 1914 to 1922. And virtually all the rock you see on the outside of the Lincoln Memorial, the rock up at the top, all of these columns, is all made from the Yule marble. This was a huge project. Lincoln himself is actually made of marble, but it comes from a stone quarry in Georgia. But largely, this is a Yule marble building. And then another famous site made at the Mule in DC is the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, constructed in 1931 and located in Arlington Cemetery. The tomb itself had some erosion and some wearing going on, and so it was refurbished in 2002. And stones and rock, or select stones of the Yule was used in doing this renovation work. Then here's a map showing some of the Yule marble notable locations throughout the United States. I think there are about 30 states here, but I've looked at a list of Yule buildings, and there are easily 40 states that are covered in the country that have some type of Yule marble in their building construction. So it is probably truly Colorado's most famous building stone. Well, if we go to the old US Post Office, and we walk a few blocks towards town, we'll run across this building on 17th and Champa. And this is the Boston building that was designed in 1890 and built by Andrew Schock and Rantoul, originally called the Boston Block Building. And it's one of the last remaining native sandstone business buildings on 17th Street. If you zoom in, this building has some really nice arches and some very intricate carving, that can be seen right from the street level. In fact, the words Boston Block is carved right here. It's a little bit hard to see. You can see here some very nice carving on the tops of one of these columns. But probably my favorite part of this building are the sandstone blocks that are used in the construction right on the street level. This is on the Champa Street side, and this is easily a 2-foot by 3-foot block of sandstone, beautiful Aeolian crossbeds here that have been cut and make the base of this building. So this rock is called the Manitou Sandstone, which is actually a local name for the Lyons sandstone formerly, and it comes from a quarry down by Colorado Springs. So here is a Google Earth view of that quarry area. Here you can see the city of Colorado Springs, and this is actually the Red Rock Canyon open space, which perhaps some of you have gone down to take some hikes. These beds here are nearly vertically dipping, and the old quarry locations are located right here in what was called the historic Kenmure quarries. So this is actually an outcrop of the Lion sandstone, and then this ridge is Dakota. This ridge over here is actually the Codell. And there's some really nice signs and nice hiking trails around here. Here's a schematic cross-section for one of those signs, and going from west to east shows the fountain formation, but then this reddish orange Lion sandstone, again vertically dipping, and then here's a Dakota ridge and a Codell ridge. So this orangish red color and the large uniform beds made this a very attractive and actually a very expensive building stone. And the fact that the sand was softer made it easier to cut into large building blocks like the one that we saw on the Boston building. A few facts about the Kenmure Quarry. Operations began in 1883 and reached a peak in the early 1900s, and the largest operator was the Greenlee family from Denver. And at the time of peak production, this quarry employed about 120 men and shipped about 10 carloads a day of stone. A railroad spur was built into Red Rock Canyon around 1889, and this really facilitated getting this stone out to the market. But quarrying operations wound down around 1915, largely due to declining demand. Here's an historic picture of Kenmure quarry operations around the turn of the century. And then here's what it looks like today if you go out there. There are dozens and dozens of these types of quarry sites around this Red Rock open space. encourage you to go take a walk. They're really nice looking. This is actually a bedding plane. This is a vertical dipping bed here of the Lyons. You can see here there are 3 or 4 benches of the sandstone that's been cut from this particular location. But there are lots of exposures like this. You see again this brilliant red-orange sandstone that's a perfect match for what we see back in the Boston building. So another famous downtown building constructed of the Manitou sandstone is the Masonic Temple on the 16th Street Mall at the corner of Welton Street. It was designed by Frank Edbrook. He was a famous Denver architect and built in 1889. And it's built with this Richardsonian Romanesque type architecture, which is characterized by these large arched windows. There are many unique carvings in this building. Here's a zoom in. You can see some of the delicate stonework that's done here. If we zoom in even farther, you can see kind of a gargoyle face and some very intricate carvings that are part of this unique building. There's a note in the 1889 Western Architect and Building News that states that these carvings were probably Denver's first examples of such stonework that was done after the stone was already in place. So the idea here is that the stone was cut down at the Kenmore Quarry, shipped up to Denver, put into place on the building, and then carved right there in place as this building was being built. Here's some more of these archways, and I guess a good part about a softer sandstone is that it's easier to carve. But the downside of that is that it also makes it easier to erode and to weather. You can see here some of the dentine work at the bottom of this balcony is eroded. It has this windowsill right here. So this makes these buildings a little bit harder to maintain and actually fairly expensive to try to get stone to cut and match these erosional areas. So those of you that have lived in Denver a long time might remember that this building had a major fire on March 3rd of 1984. It essentially gutted the interior and was one of Denver's major fires of all time. This was a 4-alarm fire at the time that it happened. But instead of tearing the building down, the owners decided to renovate it, and they essentially shored up the walls and then rebuilt the interior of this building with a new steel structure. So it's essentially a new building, and hopefully will last a long time. So we can't really talk about the Lyons sandstone without going to the type section, which is up in Lyons, Colorado. And up there, the Lyons is described very similarly, orange to pink, pinkish grays, well-sorted sandstone. But the key here is that they mention that it is very well cemented. And that is important because the rock in the quarries up near Lyons tends to split along bedding planes into strong, uniform slabs. And that makes this rock ideal for flagstones, for sidewalks, steps, patios, any type of landscaping. So indeed, this is Colorado's one of Colorado's best known stone centers, and the quarries here are active today. So here's the town of Lyons from Google Earth. And then you can see this ridge to the north of town is where a lot of the outcroppings of the Lyons occur. And so we're going to zoom into this area right here. So here's the state geologic map. The light blue here represents the Lyon sandstone deposits. The red line here represents a small anticline called the Lyons anticline, and it results in the beds of the Lyons dipping off this structure at dips of about 8 to 15 degrees. And then these are all these quarrying locations that exist on the anticline, many of them still active. Here's a Google Earth image of one of those. Here you can see the Lyons outcrops. And then these are all pallets of cut sandstone that are stacked and ready for shipment. A little bit about the quarry history here. It boomed in the late 1880s with a demand for paving stone and sidewalk stone. The town of Lyons itself was founded by Edward S. Lyons, and it was a quarrying base for the cutting and the shipping of the sandstone. Vast amounts were shipped to eastern cities in the U.S. But then a bust occurred in the early 1900s, and that was associated with the advent of concrete and asphalt. They didn't need this beautiful stone anymore. But a revival of this Lyons sandstone occurred after World War II with the development of the California suburban ranch home, and the fact that people like to live and play outdoors and have nice patios where they could do that. So there are numerous quarries still active today quarrying this Lyons sandstone. But there are very few buildings that really consist of the Lyon. There is one structure located in downtown Denver, just west of the Capitol building, and that's the Colorado Veterans Memorial. This was dedicated in 1990, and this facade is made up of the Lyons. And you can see here the Denver Civic Center right in the background. But if you really want to see Lyons sandstone, go walking around any of the old neighborhoods in Denver. Here are some of the streets in Capitol Hill, and you can see they consist of this marvelous, huge slabs of this great, wonderful pink hard sandstone. And if you walk around, you can see all kinds of really cool sedimentary structures. Here's some nice ripples. Raindrop impressions are really easy to find. And so if you go around anywhere in Denver or anywhere in Colorado, you'll see Lyons sandstone almost everywhere, used for flagstones, used for patio. There's a lot of it used at the Denver Botanic Gardens. CU campus has a lot of Lyons used in some of its landscaping, and you'll see this in many, many places. So that's the Lyons, and now I'm going to just say that if you have questions, put them in the chat, and we'll try to get to those at the end of the talk. But I'm going to turn it over to David now. He's going to talk about some of the hard rocks that are used in many of our downtown buildings as well. David, I hope you have.
Hello.
They are. Okay.
And it says I'm controlling your computer, so we'll see about that.
All right.
So same geologic column on the left showing where these rocks are coming from. And so I'm going to start by subdividing the Precambrian according to Ogden Tweeto's seminal work, where he categorized all the granites in Colorado into one of three families, and they are the youngest Pikes Peak granite at about 1 billion years old, the we'll call it middle-aged 1.4 billion year old silver plume family, and then I'll also talk about the oldest granites in Colorado, the 1.7 billion year old Boulder Creek family. I cannot advance the slide, Rob, will you please?
Okay.
If you can. Thank you. So this is the Colorado Digital Geologic Map, on which I have chosen 5 different colors that I'll walk you through. The first one is Precambrian, generally older than the oldest granite, feldspathic, hornblendic, and biotitic gneisses are in the 2 shades of green, and though those aren't used frequently for building stones, they're very common in landscaping, heavily fractured, and so they break up easily, naturally, and it's hard to go for a walk anywhere in Denver and not see this in somebody's flower beds. The next oldest granites are those of the Boulder Creek, kind of the darkest color of red at 1.7 billion years old. Then the silver plume granites are shown in the slightly lighter plum colored. And then finally, the Pikes Peak granites are in the brightest pink. Also shown are the tertiary ash flow tuffs, lavas, volcaniclastic sediments in red. And I'll draw your attention to 2 things on this map. First of all, unlike the previous map, which many of the clever folks in the audience probably realized wasn't the whole state, this is the whole state. And so Denver is located under the D. And I'll just call your attention initially to the little group of red dots that are just south and east of the letter D. That's sort of where we'll finish. Again, I can't flip, Rob, so will you please? So I'm going to start with Colorado State Capitol because it is representative of this oldest group of granites. The South Beaver Creek granite is a member of that 1.7 billion year old family, and this rock was quarried sort of unbelievably to me quite far away, way south, about 7 miles south of Gunnison in the Aberdeen Zugelder quarry. Next slide, please. And so on this, the beauty of this digital geologic map, of course, is you can change colors. So I grabbed that whole family of 1.7 billion year old granites, and if you couldn't see them before, you can see they truly do span all of the ranges in, well, many of the ranges in northern and central Colorado. I've turned them all black here, and then shown by the red pin down there, sort of surrounded by tertiary extrusive and volcaniclastic sediments, is the location of the South Beaver Creek Quarry. Next slide. So this is a beautiful sort of a granodioritic rock. The state capitol was built in over the course of about 14 years. The dome was completed in 1908, and it's a Federal Revival style building with a Greek cross floor plan. About 100 men quarried something like almost, well, 300,000 cubic feet of granite over the course of about 5 years. Then the quarry was abandoned. The Denver and Rio Grande Railroad extended narrow gauge tracks to the quarry, and all of this stone was transferred at Salida to standard gauge tracks for the trip to Denver. The First Baptist Church at 14th Avenue and Logan Street has some spectacular granite pillars from the Pinewood Springs or Cheyenne quarry that is nominally active today, I'd say. If you looked at Google Earth images, you might see a truck moving up there. Not a lot going on there, but this is what's also called the Lyons granite, or the St. Vrain granite, and it represents that Middle Age category of Precambrian granites in Colorado. Next slide, please. So again, same strategy. I won't describe it in detail, but you can see where the Pinewood Springs quarry is up in Larimer County, and all of the similarly aged granites going from essentially state line with Wyoming all the way down to the state line in with New Mexico. Next slide, please. The First Baptist Church was completed in 1938, and it's a mixed colonial and Georgian revival style structure. It has and hosts the largest polished granite columns in Colorado. These columns are one piece each, 25 feet high, 3 feet in diameter, and these rocks were transported as individual blocks, then turned on a massive lathe on site, and then finished and polished by hand. You can see from the zoomed in view there, they're just beautiful pink granites. Next slide, please. Many of you are familiar with the Equitable building at 17th and Stout. This granite came from South Platte River Valley by Argyle. And so this rock is representative of the youngest age Pikes Peak granite. So about 1 billion years old. And if you'll go to the next slide, please. Same strategy. You can see where that quarry lies very close to Colorado, to Denver. And these granites are fairly well constrained to a contiguous body of the Pikes Peak batholith. Next slide, please. So the Equitable building was Denver's first true high-rise. It was completed in 1892 and is an Italian Renaissance style building. I can't wait for the day when we can make this a true walking tour of building stones in Colorado or in Denver, because inside the lobby are phenomenal examples of many other fabulous rocks. This was Denver's tallest building for about 20 years. And the footprint, as you can see from the lower right-hand inset, is 2 back-to-back E's. Equitable definitely wanted to make a statement with this building. This building is home to the Denver Earth Resources Library, where I've probably run into many of you. These quarries that were along the old Denver South Park Pacific Railroad were quite prolific, and though they are inactive now and difficult to find signs of them even on the outcrop, they supplied stone for the U.S. Mint, as well as the Brown Palace and the Kittredge building. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we'll switch gears here a little bit, go all the way up into the tertiary, and this is Trinity United Methodist Church. It's at 18th and Broadway. I think everybody is familiar with it. This rock, I believe, was quarried from the Santa Fe Bluff Quarry, which is Western Castle Rock. It's called the Castle Rock Rhyolite, but we geologists refer to it as the Wall Mountain Tuff. This is a high Victorian Gothic style, completed in 1887. So on the map on the left, you see a much larger scale version of the geologic map. Each of those orange outcrops are mesas capped by Wall Mountain Tuff. The Wall Mountain Tuff is a welded rhyolitic tuff, and it has abundant phenocrysts of biotite and sanidine. So next slide, please. I guess I've covered them up with my label for the most part, but all those little red dots are Wall Mountain Tuff capped mesas. There is only one I could find active today, and it's not very old, looking at Google Earth photos from the past. I believe this rock, it's abundantly used at present for aggregate. Again, a lot of landscape stone, a lot of very light colored landscape stone you might think was marble, is white and pink rhyolite from the Wall Mountain Tuff. Next slide, please. So the Wall Mountain Tuff, map on the right shows all of the volcanic rocks in central Colorado, and the exposures of the Wall Mountain Tuff are there in the upper right. Nobody knows exactly where this tuff came from, at least Bill McIntosh and Chuck Chapin didn't in 2004. If somebody knows, I'd love to hear. I think the idea is it tends to be concentrated around the 39-mile volcanic area, but I'm not aware that a specific caldera or eruptive source has been identified for this. And it has a very interesting pseudoconchoidal fracture, so that when you, these blocks were probably cut from the quarry and then chiseled to have this kind of rusticated fabric. It's a little hard to see what's going on there. That's a view looking straight up one of the walls of the Trinity United Methodist Church when the sun was just right to show this beautiful conchoidal fracture. So I just have one more rock. Next slide, please. The First Church of Christ Scientist, located at 14th Avenue and Logan Street, very close to the Capitol, is comprised of stone from the Kerr Gulch Quarry. And if you haven't heard of this, it's way down near Howard. Mr. Kerr was a prominent member of the Church of Christ in Denver, and the Badger Creek Tuff was quarried for this building stone. Badger Creek Tuff is also a beautifully welded tuff with a lot of crystals and rock fragments in it. A lot of The most prominent are probably hornblende, biotite, and rock fragments that I'll show you in the next slide. Sorry for that pause. My computer went to sleep all of a sudden. Did I flip the slides? I think.
Yes, you're flipping the slides. Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Okay, my hands are in the air. I can't be flipping slides,
Okay.
except by telemetry.
Okay.
Or telepathy, that's it, telepathy. So this is a modern view of the Church of Christ, showing those beautiful columns, and spectacular fractures in this tuff are visible. Rock fragments, and you can see all the tiny hornblende and biotite crystals that are evident when you get close to it. The Badger Creek tuff only occurs in the area outlined by that group of red dots, and it is believed to have been erupted from the Mount Aetna cauldron, which was on top of what is, what we now see as Mount Princeton batholith. Next slide, please. Oh, that's an exciting one. References are here for anybody that wants to go into greater detail on these. And the next slide, I think, is a summary slide. Perfect. So thank you for your attention. Today we've been around Colorado, taking what we hope in the future will be a walking tour of some of the most beautiful buildings and building stones in the Denver area.
Well, thank you. My gosh, that was wonderful. If you guys
Thank you,
have...
Rob. Are you? Let's see. Let me give you back control. I think you're going to talk a little bit about our other forthcoming field trips.
Well, there's a couple questions.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
If you guys want them now, that's okay. Yeah. One from Ron Parker was, is there skarn mineralization at the contact of the Yule with the Treasure Mountain granite?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I don't know. So I've not been up there, but and there are not a lot of references about the geology there. But yeah, it's a good question, Ron. I don't know.
Okay. One more, and you're going to know which photo it is, Rob, but in the current photo of the red sandstone quarry, are all the small holes and inconsistencies in the quarry wall weathering since the quarry closed, or spaces that were present in the rock?
Yeah, I think most of those are weathering phenomena. The sandstone's pretty soft, and really quarry operations completed, like 100 years ago. So that's 100 years of weathering that's occurred. So I think most of those are naturally caused.
Okay, and then Ron Parker, I think, got his other question answered because he said later, oops, asked too soon, but he said, was any Lyons quarried from the north? So you must have said the answer to that when you spoke later. But
yeah. So I think all of the buildings with the large blocks of Lyons comes from that Kenmure quarry down there, but that was a fairly narrow window. When you look at it, it's probably 20 to 30 years that those rocks were used for various construction. And there are a lot of buildings in Denver. If you go into Capitol Hill, there's a kind of iconic building called the Crook Patterson. I forget the third name on it, but if you were to Google like Denver paranormal activity, this building comes up, and it's a beautiful building constructed of this Manitou sandstone, the bright red, and has kind of a French architecture to it, and it's so there are a lot of old houses in Capitol Hill that have this red sandstone, but when we get to the actual Lyons quarries up north, those are all really used for landscaping.
okay.
I'm looking through the chat here too. So Vince Matthews has pointed out that in the Capitol building, most of the marble, including the grand staircase, is not from Colorado. Indeed, it's the grand staircase is from the Carrara marble from Italy. That's very cool. I didn't know that. And there's another reference to the Beulah marble, which is also the Leadville marble, which is quarried west of Pueblo. That's great information. I wasn't aware of that either. So thank you, Vince.
And Donna has Denise, sorry, has a question about all the cobbles used for landscaping, and also, I don't know if you guys are familiar with, the Golden area, the Camp George West, and all of the houses out there that are made with cobbles. He's asking if anyone knows where those are come from.
I think, oh, I've lost her name all of a sudden.
Denise?
Denise. No, not Denise.
No.
Our prof at Mines.
Donna.
Donna. I think Donna talked about those cobbles extensively in her talk, didn't she? Because I remember, I'm fascinated by cobbles and the story they tell as well. So I paid particular attention to that. So I think we may have recorded that. I'm not sure.
Yes.
We did, yeah. I think we did, yeah. The rock
Denise,
rest.
meet Donna.
Okay. Then I see that Terry answered Ron's question. She says there is a thin band of other contact metamorphic minerals at the Yule quarry. So apparently Terry's been up there. So good for her. Thank you, Terry. Anything else?
Yeah, I was a TA there when the quarry was dormant in 1980. And that was one thing we talked about was that there wasn't a very broad area of contact metamorphism. It was mostly just in the marble.
That's interesting. So some people have asked if there are quarry tours, and apparently when the quarry reopened in the 1990s, they were doing some tours, but those have all been discontinued, and so there's really no way for the public to get up there. I've read recently where Colorado Stones Quarries is building some viewing sites where you can see the quarry from some removed location uphill from the town of Marble. But the geology up there must be impressive. I would love to get up there and do some knocking around. That would be interesting.
Okay, there's one more question I think people are trying to answer. From Brenda, she says, I just gotta scroll down. What is the black marble at Yule Quarry? Sorry, it just scrolled down.
So is that question maybe from the pictures? So I mean
to Terry. Sorry, I guess that's to Terry.
Yeah. Okay, to Terry. Okay.
And I was asking, I don't know what she's talking about, whether she's talking about the veins that you see in the pictures or a separate body of marble.
Oh, from the cross section. Yeah, I'm not sure if we probably have to flip back to that cross section, but there is a separate unit that's been metamorphosed, and that's a good question, Brenda. I can dig into that and probably get back to you, because there are a number of rocks in the sedimentary column that have been metamorphosed, and perhaps that's one of them. But I'm not aware that other darker marble has ever been quarried. I think everything has been pretty limited to the Yule.
I'd also mention that the pluton that metamorphosed the Yule marble is extremely young. It's not like most of the other igneous intrusions we have in Colorado. It dates at 12 million years.
Oh, really? Okay. So that's much younger than the information I had. So that is a pretty recent feature. Okay. Thanks, Vince.
There have been an old potassium argon date on it of 12 million, and most people were very skeptical of it, but Dave Gonzalez at Fort Lewis College did a uranium date on it that shows that it is indeed 12 million.
Okay.
Most of the intrusions around there, those laccoliths, are in the 20s.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. Well, if there are no other questions, one thing we like to do is give you a little preview of the field trips that the On the Rocks committee is planning for this summer. And so we've, with the help of one of our committee members, Mike Tischer, we've built a story map site using ArcGIS. And I'm wondering here if Debbie can maybe, or Kathy.
I guess Kathy just started, yeah. So.
Kathy's gonna run this from our website.
Let's see, so I can actually show it to you from our website.
There we go.
You go to events here, there's this link, new story map of the 2021 field trips. And so, yeah, there's a map on the right here. And then if you click on the title of the talk or the trip, it'll kind of zoom in on the map to show you where it is. And then, of course, there's a link to register for the event and some more information. So I can just run through next up is in July, the beginning of July. We're going to go to the Belden Fossil Formation.
Yeah, and I'll be glad to chime in. So
yeah,
this trip is just right outside of Dot Zero, which is between Eagle and Glenwood Springs on I-70. And so there are some great Pennsylvania and Belden outcrops that are just about a 15-minute drive up the road from Dot Zero. There are some nice algal heads, you know, these kind of Permian or Pennsylvanian age algal mounds that you would see in the Paradox Basin. There's some nice fossil exposures there, plus some other, you know, more typical Pennsylvania fossils. So Dennis Gertenbach and John McLeod are running this trip for us, and it's almost sold out, but I think there might be a spot or two left if you're interested in that. That's going to be July 10th.
Oh.
And then after that, we're going to go down to Paint Mines Interpretive Park. You can see here located on the map, just kind of out in the plains east of Castle Rock and Colorado Springs. Bob Reynolds, you all know Bob from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science, is going to be leading a one-day, late morning, early afternoon tour of some of the colorful rocks. And you can see here the picture. That's just really some spectacular sedimentary rocks there, very colorful. So that's on July 16th.
July 16.
Right. And then Kermit Shields, one of the board members at Dinosaur Ridge, is going to be leading a family-friendly tour along the neat exposures and outcrops on Dinosaur Ridge, and then finishing up in the afternoon with a tour over at the Morrison Natural History Museum. And so that's a family-friendly tour that will be Saturday, July 24th. Then August 7th, we'll run a trip up to Cripple Creek, the Victor Mine area. So Gary Curtis is an RMAG member, and he is an engineer that worked on reclamation work up in Cripple Creek for many, many years. He knows the area really well. So we're going to have a tour in the morning that will take us on the overlook of some of Newmont's huge open pit mine operation. That's going to be run by the Victor Historic Museum, and we'll take a bus up there. And then in the afternoon, Gary's going to take us on some trails to some old neat mine sites and old historic mine structures in and around Victor and Cripple Creek. And we hope that we'll be able to have a site where we can do some rock collecting too, of some maybe some of the low-grade ore deposits. So that's August 7th.
August 7th. And then
And then Sweet Home Mine, the rhodochrosite location for some amazing minerals in Colorado. So this is the Colorado State Mineral. So this is a very unique opportunity. The current mine operator only allows tours of 5 people into this location. So we've secured spots for 5 folks, and we're going to have a drawing for RMAG members, students, and teachers that would allow them and give them the opportunity to tour the mine on this Saturday, August 20th. So stay tuned for more details for the drawing, and we'll have things posted perhaps in a month or 2 for that. And then the final trip will be Corral Bluffs, which is down by Colorado Springs, and that's the site of this very unique sequence of rocks that have been deposited post the Cretaceous cataclysm, and with some really unique evidence of plant and mammal growth, or really plant growth and mammal growth, actually evolution post the collision of the crater and Chicxulub. So some of the folks in the museum, Tyler Lyson will be running this trip. Ian Miller, one of the primary researchers that discovered this site and has published some amazing things in Nature magazine, has just taken a new job with the National Geographic Society, so he will not be able to lead the tour, but we're hoping that we'll have some other members from the museum that will be along to help lead our group. And so that date is yet to be determined. We're looking at dates probably in October for a trip down to Corral Bluffs. And that's what we have on store for the season. So we'd love to have as many of you join us as you can. And we're just kind of dying to get back in the field after a year of being locked down. So hope you can come along.
Yep. Super fun. And they are filling up quickly. So if there's one that's catching your eye, you better get your name on it.
Okay, well, that's all we have. Does anyone have any other comments about some of this interesting geology or the buildings? I think there are a lot of you on the calls that know a lot more about this than David and I. We'd love to hear any comments.
Hey, Rob, this is Jeff.
Yeah.
As you and I are both ex-Marathon Oil Company employees, you remember what were all the buildings that Marathon's Denver Research Center made of?
Oh, were they Lyons? I guess I don't recall.
Yeah, I put that in the chat window. They were Lyons.
Okay.
They were buried up near Lyons.
Hmm.
I don't know if they were just a facade or if the walls were built of the Lyons sandstone.
Wow.
But the main building and a couple others were built with Lyons sandstone.
Wow. Okay.
They took all that material and threw it in a landfill after Marathon sold the property. So it was just so sad.
What a shame. But yeah, I'd forgotten those. But yeah, those were red. So what year would those have been built?
I think it was built right around in the early 50s, like 53. I can't remember what. It was post World War II.
Okay.
And then
was it Ohio Oil Company at that time?
Yes, it was Ohio Oil Company at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to find a good photo of it. I was just looking through some historical volume about Littleton. And I couldn't find a date when the buildings were first built.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember they had a rally there at one point when Mobil was trying to buy Marathon.
Oh, really? Huh.
They had, and I think it was 53, but don't hold me to that. When they started building that, or when it opened.
It was a beautiful campus. For those of you that ever went down there or worked down there, it's a beautiful view of the mountains and great location.
It was, and south of Arapahoe Road, Broadway was dirt road, so it was a dirt road going in front of the research center. There was no such thing as Highlands Ranch to the south.
And lots.
I don't think they had color photography then, did they?
No,
Sorry, Vince, didn't mean to interrupt you.
I just said there are lots of great geologists that work down there.
Sure were.
Yeah,
Where exactly was it? I don't know. I have no idea where it was.
It's on the corner of Broadway and Dry Creek.
All right.
South of Arapahoe Road.
Really?
That's right, Ron. That's where I started my career for 14 years.
How about it?
I live really close to there, and it amazed me because people told me when I was house shopping when I moved to Denver in 2017, they said, "Oh, that's where the old Marathon Research Center was," because it was completely scraped. The property was, and they built these kind of condo type townhomes as well as single family homes. And the thing is, those places are so close together. They have no yards. They have no, it's not a conventional style suburban neighborhood. But what amazed me about it was that it's on a bluff and it looks right out at the mountains. Like you couldn't have picked a better spot to build anything than that location.
The whole front of the building, there were low-lying buildings, was glass. So when you would go to the cafeteria for a break, we actually had breaks, or you go there for lunch, you could just stare out at the mountains all the way from Pikes Peak up to Longs. And I just saw Michelle. So is that Michelle Bishop? Are you also on this chat? Michelle says my career also. So I'm guessing Michelle Bishop is on here.
Wow, too bad it's gone.
So it was sad the day they started tearing that down. It just made me want to cry.
And when was it torn down? When did that happen?
Gosh, so now you're really forcing me to think. Maybe Michelle.
Come on, Jeff. Come on.
Okay, I was there from 81 to 94. They got rid of geological research, geophysical research. Then I think it hung on till 99 with very few people. It was like 360 when I was there. Then they were down to 160, 140 up till 99. I think about 2001 or so is when they started tearing it down. Maybe it might have been a little later after the property sold, but it was early to mid 2000s.
Okay.
I'm looking at
I just pulled up.
portrait in oil and I'm trying to find some facts for you here, Jeff, but
There we go.
I just pulled it up. September 2000.
doesn't talk about it.
Oh, Denise just came up September 2000?
Yeah, it says Denver Post, Marathon Oil to close Littleton office
Right.
and cut jobs. And it was September the 14th of 2000. 80 acres it was, Petroleum Technology Center.
Jeez.
But the buildings were there for quite a long time after they closed, right? Because I thought there was discussions that it would be a campus, maybe for mines or some other school.
Right.
Weren't there discussions about that?
So it might have been like 2005 when they tore or started tearing down, or 2008 even. I don't know, somewhere in that time frame.
And then it sat vacant for about a decade.
Yeah.
Just a vacant
You
lot.
know, they used to test a lot of different frac fluids out in the backyard there. I wonder if there was some reasons for just doing away with that and not trying to sell that to anybody else.
I haven't.
Actually,
Sorry,
I'm
go ahead,
sorry,
Michelle.
Jeff. There were some articles about the cleanups that were necessary for all of that injection fluid and stuff that they had experiments on. So I think they had to do some work before anybody could build a house on it anyway.
Sure.
And I've not read the most recent Littleton report, but there's supposed to be some kind of sinkhole that's developing. So the developers want the city to step in and bail them out.
So weren't there gardens? Like, couldn't you have a vegetable garden somewhere?
Yeah, we had a vegetable garden in the back 40.
Yep. It was
So-
a fabulous place.
Yeah, people would go out at lunchtime or on their breaks, and they'd either walk around the little dirt track around the gardens, or they'd go out and work on their vegetable gardens. And there were quite some amazing gardeners.
Now, did you say Broadway and Dry Creek?
Yes.
Yep.
So that would
Wow.
be the northeast corner.
Okay. I've been by there 100 times and
We're
never
little
knew it
too-
was.
Yeah, we're
Never
little
knew it was there.
villages now. But also, so Vince, they tore it down, and somebody had bought the property, and then they were supposed to develop it, but they didn't. And then someone else bought it from them. They were going to make streets going on a diagonal across there, and that never got off the ground. So then finally, the present owners finally got it up and running with all the development of all those cracker box houses. So it sat vacant even after they tore down the buildings. It was just a big open fields of weeds and dying trees for maybe 5 or 10 years after they tore the buildings down.
Ooh.
Well, just a quick note. I wanted to thank everybody for their attention and for the great questions and the fill-in that a lot of people have provided. As Rob said, we're by no means experts on either the rocks or the buildings. We just have been kicking this around from back when we had real field trips, and thought this would be a good way to go virtual, because all these buildings the exteriors are perfectly accessible now. So stay tuned. Maybe next year this will be a walking tour. Rob, what do you think?
I hope so. I think
Yeah.
listen more. So the nice part about doing this virtually is we get to do a little deeper dive on the quarries. But I think seeing these rocks up close it'd be pretty fun. I was down to the Capitol yesterday to take a couple more pictures, and boy, there's just so many beautiful buildings, even some newer ones down there. There's the Colorado Supreme Court building has these statues, and I'm sure are very likely carved from the Yule marble, right on the front foundation, and then right next to the Capitol, the Colorado, the former Colorado History Museum. There's another beautiful building all made of made of the Yule marble. That's right next to the First Baptist Church that David showed you the pictures of. So there's a lot of great rocks to see right in the city. So yeah, we'll maybe do that next summer.
I went on a field trip with David Noe where it was Outcrop Winery. Outcrop Winery. So maybe you could make it a
All right.
building microbrewery.
Yeah.
Building microbrewery.
I think that could happen. I think that's a good idea. So.
What is the microbrewery made of? Yeah. So.
Okay.
Good.
Well, thanks so much, everybody.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks a lot.
You, Rob and David. That was great. Thank you.
All right. See you on the outcrop.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, guys.